Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and I am happy to be with you for another episode of sci-fi and fantasy news. What's going on in those worlds? What's coming out in terms of movies and books and television and possibly video games and comic books? There's always stuff. There's always something happening, so we're going to cover some of that in today's episode, and we are going to start with some movie news. First is that Mindy Kaling has been in talks with Marvel Studios about a possible Ms. Marvel. Not sure if that will be a TV series or a movie, but she said that they are excited about it, which is exciting. So she confirms that they are at least in talks about the adaptation. She said in a recent interview that she's been in talks with Marvel Studio, and she said, I think the people I've spoken to at Marvel about it are so excited about the character, and I think they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And I told them I would help it anyway because I truly love her. She continued by saying that the people she spoke with were very interested in Kamala's character, and there are no new avenues in which Miss Marvel could be explored. They really seemed interested, she said, and I think they will probably do something. Now that there's this streaming service with them, it might be something like that, but I think they understand how much there is the excitement. When asked who might play the heroine should Marvel Studios bring Kamala to the screen, Kaling hedged on dropping any names. She believes that possibly an unknown talent might be the best and most exciting fit. She said, I feel it might need to be an unknown. In the past, reports have surfaced of interest in Ms. Marvel, but so far nothing definite has happened. But then with with Carol Danvers and Captain Marvel, of course, I say but Carol Danvers, who is Captain Marvel, with the success of that live-action film, there is now more hype for a possible Ms. Marvel adaptation. If you are unfamiliar with Ms. Marvel, she is a 16-year-old Pakistani American, from Jersey City, New Jersey, who idolizes Carol Danvers, who of course is Captain Marvel. Her name is Kamala Khan, and her character was created by Sana Amanat, G. Willow Wilson, and Adrian Alfonso. She's the fourth character to take the name of Ms. Marvel. She first appeared in Captain Marvel number 17 in November of 2013. And as I said, she is a 16-year-old Pakistani American. And I think that would be really exciting if this were to become a television series or a movie, because representation matters. And how often do you see Pakistani Americans represented in comic books, or people of color? Often there are more people of color in comic books all the time and on the big screen, but this would be a wonderful representation for young women of color. And I think it's great that Mindy Kaling is looking into possibly adapting this and working with Marvel on that. So I'm excited to see it. I comment a lot about how far behind I am in terms of all of the Marvel and DC comic books, or comic books that have been made into movies and live-action television shows and animated television shows. I'm very, very far behind, but I am actually intrigued by Ms. Marvel, and I like the fact that they would be representing this character on screen. So I would definitely check her out. Now, of course, rumors have surfaced in the past about a possible Marvel Studios interest in Ms. Marvel, but nothing definitive has ever been said about an adaptation. Last year, executive producer Kevin Feige said plans for Kamala would cultivate naturally following the debut of Captain Marvel. He's quoted as saying, "We wanted to get Captain Marvel out there first so that there was something for a young Muslim girl to get inspired by." And again, I would love to see that diversity on the screen, especially in terms of comic books. Not only a person of color, but a young Muslim woman. I think that would be a great representation for a comic book movie. Moving on to more movie news, and that is that Ghostbusters 3 is happening, and the original cast is said to have read the script. It is being directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan Reitman, the original director of Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. Of course, we had the reboot remake of Ghostbusters a couple of years ago with the all-female cast, but this would be at Ghostbusters, and it would be Ghostbusters 3. Jason Reitman recently spoke at a Ghostbusters fan fest, and he said that going into this film, he wants to make a love letter to the original movie. As I said, the original cast has read the script. Some of them have expressed interest in being in the new movie. I know Sigourney Weaver has said that she'd be willing to come back as Dana Barrett. Not as sure about the three of the four original Ghostbusters. I know they've all read the script. Of course, Egon Spengler is no longer with us, as Harold Ramis, who played that character, passed away, sadly. So he would obviously not be in the new movie unless they somehow CGI'd him. But back to the comments that Jason Reitman was making, he said, "I thought I was going to be this indie dude who makes Sundance movies. And then this character came to me, and she was a 12-year-old girl." So the story centers on the tween future Buster, who is going to be played by Captain Marvel's McKenna Grace. And she is joined by her mother, played by Carrie Coon, and brother, who is played by Finn Wolfhard. And then Reitman goes on to say, "I didn't know who she was or why she popped into my head, but I saw her with a proton pack, and this story began to form, and it formed over many years, actually. It started with a girl, and all of a sudden it was a family." Eventually he just knew this was a movie that he needed to write. He has recruited Gil Keenan to help write and develop the script, and then he, as I said, it has been read by the original cast. Reitman said, "We reached out to all the originals, the cast, the crew, the people who made Ghostbusters, and we even formed this kind of small group that gets together, an advisory board of people who worked on the original film to make sure that we make it right." I'm not going to give anything away today, but I will say it's a new movie. This is a new movie about a new set of characters. It takes place in a new place, a new location. He did also thank Ghostbusters reboot director Paul Feig for kicking down the door in terms of broader storytelling, and added that he's excited for the possibility of all kinds of Ghostbusters movies. It sounds like it might turn into some kind of franchise. Now, I will say that I'm always a little leery about when bringing back movies from my childhood. I loved Ghostbusters as a kid. Ghostbusters 2 was okay. It wasn't. I didn't like it as well as Ghostbusters. My brother, sister, and I still quote Ghostbusters to each other on a regular basis. We could have an entire conversation and nothing but Ghostbusters quotes because we are dorks. But that's okay. We love each other and we're lovable dorks. I do like that this is going to be a new story. We have a lot of reboots happening lately where they just take the original movie or television show or whatever and just remake it with new people. And that's okay. It does bring those things to a younger audience. But for me personally, I am happy to see that this is going to be a new story and that they're going to still introduce people to the Ghostbusters world. And of course, people were introduced to it with the recent remake with the all-female cast. So they at least have some idea if they haven't seen the originals. But again, I like that it's a new story. I am actually kind of excited to see where it might go, and I'm excited to see which of the original cast might be signing on for this project. So Ghostbusters 3 is definitely happening, and it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. We are going to go ahead and take our first break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be talking about more news from the world of science fiction and fantasy, including the new trailer for Frozen 2. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast, and I'll be right back. Hi, this is Sarah, host of the GSMC Book Review podcast, here to talk to you about a new trilogy from Tamara Veach and Renee DeFazio. For every soul, there is a theme, a path that must be followed, lessons that must be learned. This is the basis of The Emissary, Book 1 of the One Great Year series, a tale of love reborn throughout the ages, of epic battles between good and evil, and of how the consciousness of humanity ebbs and flows through the endless cycles of light and dark. Tamara and Renee are a husband and wife writing team who love researching historical and spiritual information, and I am excited to say that they will be joining me on the GSMC Book Review podcast on June 18th to talk about The Emissary and the One Great Year series. Released by Waterside Productions, Inc., The Emissary is available at Amazon.com or by ordering through your favorite bookstore. Make The Emissary part of your summer reading list today.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi podcast. Before the break, we were talking about Ms. Marvel and Ghostbusters, and now we are going to move to the new Frozen trailer, which dropped today. The movie comes out November 2nd, and the trailer is now available to watch online, obviously, or I'm sure it will start being in theaters. And it is the anticipated release of the sequel to the original Frozen movie, which came out in 2013. It looks a little darker than the first one. Elsa is exploring her powers, and it starts out with her swimming, first running along water, and then sinking below the surface, swimming through those stormy waters. It seems to be nighttime. She's trying to find her way out of the cold water. And then we have a voiceover from Pabby, who is the troll who helped Elsa in the first film. He says, "The past is not what it seems. You must find the truth. Go north across the enchanted lands and into the unknown, but be careful. We have always feared Elsa's powers were too much for this world. Now we must hope they are enough." So there's clearly something going on that needs Elsa's powers to help fix it. Idina Menzel is returning as Elsa. Kristen Bell is returning as Anna, along with Jonathan Groff playing Kristoff and Josh Gad as Olaf. So it's nice to see all of those characters coming back. It just wouldn't be the same if we didn't have at least that core group. Disney did release a first glimpse of the sequel back in February, but now we get the full trailer, the official full trailer. And the film, as I said, opens in theaters November 22nd. So I'm curious to think what you think of the new trailer. Are you excited about a second Frozen movie? Were you not thrilled with the first one, so you don't want to see a second one? I loved the first one, and I'm happy to go see a second one. Sequels can be iffy, Sometimes they hit and sometimes they miss, but I did like the first one, so I will definitely be checking out the second one. And we'll see if we get another song that gets stuck in everyone's heads, like Let It Go. or actually most of the Frozen soundtrack. My nieces sang the Frozen soundtrack for months, and all the various songs would get stuck in my head. Thankfully, I live in California and they live in Montana, but I spent several weeks with them after the movie came out, and there was a lot of singing of Frozen, which was fun, but definitely gets stuck in your head after a while. But moving on, before I start thinking too much about the Frozen soundtrack and those songs once again get stuck in my head, we'll move on to other animated film news, and that is that Terry Pratchett's Discworld novel, The Amazing Maurice, is going to be turned into an animated feature. The late Terry Pratchett's work has gotten a bit of a revival with the live-action take on Good Omens on Amazon, and now his Amazing Maurice is set to become an animated feature film. The animation is based upon The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents, which was the 28th Discworld novel to be published back in 2001. It was published by Doubleday. The novel was optioned by Germany-based Ulysses Film Production, who will work with Ireland's Cantilever Media to bring it to life. Terry Rossio, who worked on Shrek and Pirates of the Caribbean, has written the screenplay, and Carter Goodrich from Brave and Ratatouille is taking on the character design for director Toby Genkel. The film is slated to have a $17 million production budget. So if you are unfamiliar with Terry Pratchett's book, The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents, first off, it's got a great name. The tale was Pratchett's take on the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Maurice is a cat who needs to make a quick buck. When he stumbles across a kid who is playing a pipe and has a horde of literate rats, an idea forms of having the kid take on the role of the Pied Piper. Only things backfire when they end up in the town of Bad Blintz, which is where the real fun begins. Cantilever Media CEO Andrew Baker has shared that the project has been in pre-development for years and is now ready to push forward with now that they have a completed script and character designs, with a hope of a 2022 release. According to Baker, Terry Rossio's screenplay twists and turns and produces an unexpected yet heartwarming ending, with Carter Goodrich's designs bringing these characters to life in their own unique style, which I'm sure audiences will love. Executive producer Rob Wilkins is also quoted as saying, he's also the managing director of Narrativia that manages Pratchett's properties. And he said that the author came up with the idea when he saw the Maxfield Parrish painting, the Pied Piper in the bar of the Palace Hotel in San Francisco. So Rob Wilkins says, Terry seemed lost in the painting, and so I finished my beer and ordered another. By the time it arrived, Terry had sketched out the plot for The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents, and had it played it directly into my brain like a mini movie. He went on to share that the author would be delighted with the character designs of Carter Goodrich, and that bringing this story to life was so important to Terry, and it upsets me that he won't get to see the finished film, but the teams at Ulysses Film Production and Cantilever Media are honoring his vision, and I am absolutely delighted. The Amazing Maurice will be the first animated feature to be made from a Terry Pratchett novel, and now I need to go and read that. People keep telling me that I need to read Terry Pratchett, and it's on my list. He's on my list, but I have not. Have I read any? I feel like I've read one. That's terrible. I can't even remember. It was a long time ago if I read it, and I cannot remember if I actually read it or if I just had it and then I didn't read it. I'll have to look at my list. I have a book list because I can't remember what books I've read. So I'll have to look and see if I have read any Terry Pratchett, because off the top of my head I can't remember, but people keep recommending him to me. I know he has a very quirky sense of humor and that his books are a lot of fun, and so I definitely need to check that out, especially if I'm going to watch Good Omens, and then especially if this feature is coming out. That gives me at least some time. If it's not coming out till 2022, I can probably find time to read the amazing Maurice and his educated rodents. But of course, this was the 28th Discworld novel to be published. So clearly I have my work cut out for me in terms of catching up on Terry Pratchett novels. Definitely going to have to do that. In other news relating to books being adapted for film or television, there is a new Dune series coming out, and it is called It's Dune, the Sisterhood series. It has been greenlighted by Warner Media, and Denis Villeneuve is going to direct the pilot. Villeneuve is the same person who is directing the movies, and it's been confirmed that the current plan is to produce at least 2 Dune movies. So those movies haven't even come out yet, but Legendary Television and Warner Media are working to develop a new streaming series called Dune, the Sisterhood. This show will focus on the mysterious Bene Gesserit Order, a powerful clan of women who have worked from the shadows to manipulate the great houses of the Dune universe to their own ends. The new series will see Villeneuve directing the pilot, which will be based on a script by John Spates. These two will also be responsible for, these two along with Eric Roth, were also responsible for writing the upcoming film, which will be the first in a 2-part cinematic experience, as long as Legendary moves forward with the planned sequel. The series will have Villeneuve and Spates as executive producers alongside Brian Merritt, and Kim Herbert for the Frank Herbert estate. Kevin J. Anderson, who has co-written many of the Dune novels after Frank Herbert's death, is also set to co-produce. According to Villeneuve, the Bene Gesserit have always been fascinating to me. Focusing a series around that powerful order of women seemed not only relevant and inspiring, but a dynamic setting for the television series. So at this time, we don't know much about the television series, but I am wondering what your thoughts are. First of all, are you excited that there will be 2 movies? In theory, at least 1 movie and hopefully 2 movies based on the Dune novel by Frank Herbert. And then are you excited about this sort of spin-off that is going to be a streaming series? I'm going to admit to you that I have not read Dune. I remember seeing I think it was a miniseries when I was a kid. I don't remember which adaptation that might have been, and it pretty much scared the snot out of me. That was probably before I grew to love science fiction and fantasy as much as I now do, but so I have not read them. Once again, along with Terry Pratchett, apparently I'm going to need to put the Dune series on my to-be-read list, but I'll get there eventually. Maybe I can find them on audiobook. I usually have more time for that. At any rate, it is time to go ahead and take our second break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll have a few more news stories and then be wrapping things up. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast. We are going to wrap things up with a couple of Netflix series that are being renewed for more seasons. The first is that Love, Death, and Robots will be back for a second series. This was a surprise hit that seemed to come out of nowhere, but now it is returning for a second season. It is based on the short stories of a slew of talented authors. It is an animated, it's a set of animated shorts, and it's said to be the perfect show to get Black Mirror fans through the long wait between seasons. Not only that, but they truly stood on their own as some fantastic stories. The anthology series was created by Joshua Donen, David Fincher, Jennifer Miller, and Tim Miller, and apparently Jennifer Yu Nelson is slated to be the showrunner for Volume 2 of the series. Just as in the first series, or the first season, this season will have each episode deal with either love, death, or robots, and sometimes with a combination of all three. A tweet from See What's Next is, Love, Death, and Robots will be back. Jennifer Yu Nelson has joined as supervising director for Volume 2 and will oversee all episodes. Nelson is the director who help deliver a voice on the series that will appeal, who can help deliver a voice on the series that will appeal to women, as one of the major complaints about season 1 was the high level of male voices guiding the series. So are you excited for Love, Death, and Robots season 2? I love the name, let alone, and I do like that they're bringing in someone who can bring more of a female voice to that, that they are listening to the fans and addressing some of the concerns that those fans had. In terms of other shows being renewed, it was announced in December of 2018 that The Good Place would be renewed for a 4th season, but it has also been announced that this 4th season will be the last season. Each season has been 13 episodes. It's likely that the 4th season will also be 13 episodes. No official release date has been announced, but sometime in 2019. Michael Schur confirmed that the NBC comedy is going to be done after its 4th season. He sent out a message to his fans on Twitter explaining that the decision was a creative one. He felt that 4 seasons and over 50 episodes was the right lifespan. So that message says, after The Good Place was picked up for season 2, the writing staff and I began to map out as best we could the trajectory of the show. Given the ideas we wanted to explore and the pace at which we wanted to present these ideas, I began to feel like 4 seasons, just over 50 episodes, was the right lifespan. At times over the past few years, we've been tempted to go beyond 4 seasons, but mostly because making this show is a rare creatively fulfilling joy. And at the end of the day, we don't want to tread water just because the water is so warm and pleasant. As such, the upcoming 4th season will be our last. I will be forever grateful to NBC and Universal TV for letting us make The Good Place and for letting us end it on our own schedule. I will also be forever grateful to the creative team, both on screen and off, for their hard work and dedication to a very weird idea. We ask the question very frequently on this show, what do we owe to each other? The answer for me is, I owe all of you a whole lot. We look forward to a great final season airing this fall. And so that is the end of The Good Place. I'm actually partway through season 3, so hey, at least I'm mostly caught up on something. Well, sort of caught up. I need to finish season 3 so that I can get ready for season 4. And I discovered it on Netflix. I didn't start watching it when it first came out, but I binge watched the first 2 seasons pretty quickly and then started watching season 4, but I have not had a chance to fully catch up with season 3. Haven't had a chance to fully catch up with season 3. I'm sad that it's going, but I appreciate when shows try to leave before they go off the rails, when they have a story arc in mind and can stick to that, and as opposed to riding that flow of popularity and kind of letting the show go off the rails simply because it is so popular. One final story, and it is not exactly science fiction. Well, it is science fiction, but it's not a movie or a book. It is social media related, and that is Harry Potter fans are having a bit of a freak out over a viral video that it looks like they've caught Dobby, the house elf, on security footage. Yeah, the video. There's conjecture as to whether the video is real or fake. There's conjecture as to what it is. But it appears to show some sort of creature, kind of looks alien-esque, walking down a driveway. There's the conjecture that it's fake is because he kind of just disappears in the last frame. The original tweet is a lady posted this and said she saw this on her home camera this morning. What y'all think this is? And a lot of what people think it is Dobby. And so there's, in addition to the 1980s classic Mac and Me, but the general consensus seems to be that this creature looks like Dobby. And it kind of does look like Dobby if you squint at it. Dobby of the movies. Maybe not quite how I pictured Dobby in the books, but he is apparently, or he appears to be walking down a driveway next to a car, and then, like I said, he disappears in the last frame. So I just thought this story was funny. I don't really think it's Dobby, but it's fun to read all the tweets of people kind of freaking out that Dobby has been caught on security footage. A couple people were, kind of talking about it as sort of tongue-in-cheek and funny, and other people, there was a couple people who were like, is anybody else really freaked out by this, or is it just me? Yeah, so the one I really liked was from Potterless Pod, who said, everyone saying this is fake because he disappears in the last frame is wrong. Obviously, Dobby apparated out of there. So clearly that's what happened. Because, well, first off, Dobby wouldn't get caught on film in the first place. It's not film, you know what I mean. Anyway, that is just a silly story to wrap up this episode of the GSMC Sci-Fi Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Please join me again next week when we will be exploring more news from the worlds of sci-fi and fantasy. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.